Thought we were ready to play, and there's two Hall of Fame players that were unselfish and thought they played really well. It's hard to sustain a defensive effort against the team that is, playing the way they are offensively. And I think, the one thing, I thought when the ball is not going in, it makes it even harder.
Welcome in, Hawks fans, to another Believe in Hawks episode. Hawks split the LA back-to-back, beating the Clippers on Sunday and losing to the Lakers on Monday. So we'll just kind of talk about that on today's episode. Then also Jalen Johnson injury scare looks to be okay, but before the injury scare against the Lakers, looking very impressive against them, and I'll go into why that could have implications on DeJounte Murray. So let's go ahead and get into it. So Lakers Hawks was the previous day. Yesterday, Hawks lose in a blowout, 136 to 105. And when LeBron and AD played, I kind of said to myself, this isn't good. The Hawks just don't match up well against the Lakers if they're healthy, especially when those two are playing. And it's not just because they're great players; they legitimately just have no one who can guard them, especially LeBron. You could throw Hunter, you could throw Jalen at him, but outside of that, you really don't have many other people. And you have Vic Krejci starting in your lineup, so they're just going to attack him. He's too small; he'll just get bullied and pushed over. So I kind of figured that it wasn't going to be a great night for the Hawks when that happened. It just had that vibe to it. Especially, coming off of that fantastic performance against the Clippers, where the Hawks probably as a team had their best performance of the year so far. Really going against their guy, Harden was I think didn't make a shot in the first half of that game, and able to control Kawhi and PG. That just kind of showed you, what they were able to do out there. And, everybody contributed, everybody played well. It was one of those really, really good team overall performances. And then, you turn around 24 hours later. It is the second of a back-to-back. We always hear about a back-to-back being very difficult to maintain sometimes that energy or that type of performance because you are playing basketball. Again, the only difference in this situation, luckily, was that the Hawks didn't have to travel. They literally just had to go back to the hotel and then come back to the arena, since Clippers and Lakers still play in the same arena right now. But, in the first 20 seconds of the game, Jalen Johnson, we've seen it, he posterized Austin Reeves. Man was full teabagging him at the start. Full on teabag on the poster. And that just led to Jalen having a good night. But, I think they were up 8-2, 10-2. They had a really good 11-2 run, I think, to start the game. And then the Lakers made their run, and then that was all she wrote basically at that point for the Hawks. And that kind of was the result of the game and how things went and how things, transpired. But, it's interesting when you see the two performances, because I said this too after they beat the Clippers. This has just been an indictment of, or not indictment. It's been basically it's the theme of this season. The Hawks are such a enigma as a team because they will sometimes play against really good teams. Because listen, they lost to the Blazers and Jazz. You thinking they lost to two teams, especially the Blazers, who are considered one of the worst, if not the worst team in the NBA. Then you lose to the Jazz in a very close game, competitive down to the wire, but you lose to them. Then you're playing two LA teams and the Suns, all winning teams, all playoff teams this year, are going to be playoff teams. Even the Lakers are playing, they have a winning record. And you're okay, we're about to lose them games. This is about to go terrible for us. This is about to be really bad. This is where we fall off. And then they come back and have the performance they had against the Clippers. And you're just oh, okay, well, shoot. Okay, maybe we could beat the Lakers. And then you get blown out. Well, never mind. You never know what you're getting up from this team on a nightly basis. It's different every day. There is no, this is the Hawks you're getting on a consistent basis, which has been one of the biggest issues. They have been one of the most inconsistently consistent teams in the NBA. And so, now you split this, you go to Phoenix, you don't know what you're going to get. Phoenix is closer to the Clippers than they are to the Lakers, because the Lakers have a very unique way of attacking you. They can score from all three levels, and what I mean by that is they have someone at each level that can take over a game. As much as people, Austin Reeves can sometimes take over a game. Even D'Lo can sometimes take over a game. Then obviously we know what LeBron can do, and then we know what AD can do in the front court. Clippers are pretty much very wing guard eccentric. Harden, Kawhi, and PG are your guys that you have to worry about. They don't really. There's not a big on the Clippers you have to worry about. So the matchup is like, if we can contain the wing, we should have a chance. With the Lakers, it's like you can contain the wing, but AD could go off. Then you can contain AD, but then the wings could go off. So they have different ways of beating you, which is why even through all the stuff that they go throughout the season, people always say Lakers are a very dangerous team because matchup wise, there are teams they match up really well against because of that, because they can dominate you from inside or outside. And in this game, it showed. Phoenix is more closer to what the Hawks are going to play that played against Clippers, because again, they're pretty much in a wing-eccentric team. Nurkic is going to probably can give you more than what like whoever the Clippers have at starting center, Zubac from time to time. But for the most part, you're kind of facing someone similar. But the Suns have hit their stride since even when they played them eventually the first time in Atlanta. Suns have gotten better since then. So, and obviously they're healthy. So that has helped them a lot too. Grayson Allen has had some big games recently, and so the Hawks have a really big matchup coming up. But realistically, these last two games against LA, like I said, to tell two wins, and the Lakers game really continues to confirm what I have said about this team, is that right now, as currently constructed, they have to win games ugly. They cannot win games. They cannot win high scoring games right now. The Hawks have not won a what I call a true high scoring game since and what I mean by high scoring is like competitive high scoring. Not they scored a lot of points and they won in a blowout. Like competitive high scoring game. They have not won one of those since and they actually have won a competitive high scoring game since February 9th. I mean, we can say the Rockets game 122-113. But outside of that, I mean, if they've won a game and they've scored a lot of points, it was kind of like they won it going away. Like Knicks 116-110, you know what I'm saying? Cavaliers 112-101, Clippers 110-93. But they haven't won like a competitive high scoring game since like Rockets 122-113, or the Suns, or not the Suns, Sixers previously 127-121. So when you're and obviously Trey got injured after the Raptors game. So, or during the Raptors game. So like the thing is like they have to win games with the score being low. They have to do that to compete against those teams, or to compete against good teams. They've been lucky to play some teams that are just not offensive juggernauts recently. They're kind of hitting a tough stretch of their schedule, because after this West Coast trip, they still got to play Boston twice coming up in the next week. So like you're not getting into an easy stretch of your schedule right now. But realistically, the Hawks right now are in a spot right now where they have to make it a kind of low-scoring defensive game where they can get enough from their guys. And really right now, who you're relying on right now is Bogey, DeJounte, Jalen, and DeAndre. Those are the four guys you rely on, who kind of need to give you 15, 20 plus a night, each of them, to really have a chance in these games. And then you hope Wesley Matthews, he's hit consecutive threes in a row. He's been actually really good when he's taking shots, which has been good. Garrison has to give you some points. Trent got to give you some, with Okongwu coming back last night, which, I mean, against the Lakers, which he didn't have a bad performance, which, and he'll help, getting his legs back under him, but he'll help in the grand scheme of things. He had 11 points last night. But realistically, like I said, you're going to need guys to step up. I mean, you actually got more points from Vic Krejci as you got in a while. He gave you 11. So, you need that offensive support and the game to be kind of ugly. You're not really in a position where you can kind of play high scoring. And last night, the defense failed them because the Lakers were able to get anywhere they wanted. They were get to the middle of the floor. They couldn't stop LeBron. They couldn't guard LeBron. They couldn't guard AD. And D'Lo got off, and that pretty much was all she wrote. And then when that happens, when you let those three guys go off on you, it's going to be very hard, especially the way the Hawks are now. With just like I said, they just don't have the firepower right now to go against a team like that and to keep up with them offensively. They have to be able to get stops, and they were not able to get that last night. So that was one of the big reasons in that game why that game got so ugly, where the Clippers, they were able to control it. They were able to control the game. They got effective offense from everybody. They got what they needed from everybody. They needed it from DeAndre Hunter had a really strong game. And like I said, able to contain Harden. Harden did not have a good game, able to, slow down PG and those guys. And that gave you the opportunity to be able to win a game like that, where you held the Clippers to 93 points. Because even though Kawhi had 28 and PG had 26, it wasn't their most effective outing in terms of shooting the ball. Harden only had 9, Man had 7, Zubac had 6, Coffee had 2, and PJ Tucker had 3. So you basically only let 2 players beat you, and that's it. Or like I said, against the Lakers, that was the complete opposite story. So, like I said, Hawks got to get ready to play against the Suns coming up here. It's gonna be tough, but they gotta do what they gotta do, and hope for the best. But one thing I took out of the Lakers game before Jalen Johnson had that scare at the end, which I know people were questioning Quin Snyder about why he left him in there. Quin after the game talked about, he had Vic at the scores table ready to check in. Obviously in that situation, you have to have a stoppage of play before he can sub in. And then Jalen had the ankle scare. After the game, Lauren Williams talked to Jalen Johnson and just asked him about the injury. Jalen said he would be straight. So we're assuming that he'll be good to go. I think the Hawks will play for another 2 days. So you would assume, unless something pops up or if they feel like he's in the pan, they need him to take a break, Jalen should be good to go for the Suns. I mean, we'll see. But when you saw the play, it looked ugly. So you were worried for a second, like, oh, here we go again. Jalen's hurt again. Like, what is going on? Like, why is every single player hurt right now? And, but luckily it ended up looking like it may end up not being as bad as some people maybe suspected it to be. And what that brings me to is Jalen's performance before he got hurt. Jalen Johnson, we know he's in most improved player candidacy. We know what he has become for this team. We know that people are excited for his future on the Hawks. People are excited to build around him. I mean, this is the first offseason where, like they said, people forget Jalen Johnson is a clutch client. So you know what that means. They're going to want him to get paid. I would not be surprised if they're asking for max right out the gate. And so, but at the same time, you don't really see the Hawks letting him walk. So Jalen will probably get what he wants just because it's just like there's no way you're going to trade him away, but everybody can see the star potential that he has. One thing I said that Jalen really impressed me last night was he was aggressive last night. He was confident last night. But one thing I think that was really, really eye-opening was there were possessions where they kind of let Jalen bring it up the floor and kind of run the offense and let him be truly a point forward. A lot of the time this year, they've used Jalen Johnson as kind of a connector, as I like to say, a guy who connects. He helps, he can be that second guy to help connect the play, help a guy make a cut because he has good playmaking skills and good vision. There were some possessions where he would actually bring the ball up the floor and run point. And, it's something that is just a part of the evolution of his game. And I think it's the evolution of what the Hawks want to continue to see from him. And I mentioned, how this could impact DeJounte. And what I mean by that is obviously we know the big question is, DeJounte's future and what that will look like. And I want to take you guys back for a second. When we traded for DeJounte Murray, one of the biggest reasons why we traded for him was out of that Miami Heat series where the Hawks lost in 5 games. I think that was the series. One of the biggest glaring holes that the Hawks had was they didn't have ball handlers or that many ball handlers that could effectively and consistently handle the ball and run the offense. I mean, that was an era where, I don't even know if you guys remember during the 2021 run, Bogey was at times would play point guard. It was leading the offense between him and Kevin Huerter. And, and I think in that Miami Heat series, the Heat, basically trapped Trey and said no one else can really do anything if he's not the one initiating. So they traded for DeJounte Murray to help with that problem. Well, if you think about that trade and look where the Hawks are right now in this moment, the Hawks are I think, in a better place from a ball handling perspective. And one of the main reasons is Jalen. If Jalen Johnson continues his growth in terms of being a point forward and running the offense, what that does is if you do consider moving off DeJounte Murray, you now still have a secondary ball handler on the floor with Jalen. So if teams want to trap Trey, they can give it to Jalen and Jalen can initiate. And especially because he plays a wing position, I think, you don't really see a lot of two-guard backcourts winning in this league in terms of like being championship level nowadays, unless it was Golden State, right? But Jalen Johnson being able to initiate from his position, from the block, from the top of the key, wherever he is on the floor, provides flexibility for the Hawks. And now that need that DeJounte was supposed to fill isn't as great. I think that, Kobe Buffkin is going to be able to run the offense once he, initially gets in the lineup. I think he can run it. I mean, I don't know what they're going to do with AJ Griffin, but AJ Griffin, one of the underrated skills to his game was his ability to kind of play make a little bit, and because he has that in this game. And now you have Jalen who can also do the same thing. Now you have multiple guys who can kind of play make a little bit and kind of run the show. And obviously it helps having a different offensive system than you had under Nate McMillan, where Quin is more motion, free-flowing, passing the ball. So that in general just helps an offense flow if Trae Young's down the floor. Now, yes, the Hawks had issues this year when Trae Young's been off the floor. And obviously we remember a couple of games ago, Mike Bray during halftime saying, "Yeah, it's a different challenge and harder to score without Trae Young on the floor." Because in general, when you have that type of elite playmaker like Trae Young, it just makes everything easier. It's never going to be easier if Trae Young's not on the floor, But what you want to do is you want to be able to be capable of running the offense. And I know some people have complained about the way DeJounte plays because he sometimes goes heavy ISO and then sometimes tries to create off that. But with Jalen continuing to make those strides, and I don't know if he's at that point yet, but I felt like there was more of it last night against the Lakers. You now could move DeJounte Murray, and now you can get a guard who can fit better with Trae Young. If you think about it, his most success with a backcourt mate has came with guys like a Bogdanovich or a Kevin Huerter, because those guys really don't need the ball a lot to be able to get into their offense. DeJounte has done a great job, even though it's been frustrating, I'm sure, for him. He's done a good job of being able to come in and kind of play differently because, he's not playing his natural position when Trey's there. And he's mentioned about being a spot up shooter because that's kind of what you have to be because, again, Trae Young's so great at passing. He can find you and you'll get some good looks that way. But that's not DeJounte's game, where that's more Bogey's game. So when Bogey was starting in the backcourt with Trae Young, Bogey had a lot of success for that reason. And you now, whenever you make a trade and you're trying to figure out who you want to put besides Trae Young, if you move off DeJounte, the biggest thing you want to be able to know is who fits well with him, who can benefit from his skill set and then also complement Trae's. That's the biggest thing you want to do right there if you make a move, And I think that's why, to me, Jalen's growth in that regard is important because you had to make that trade for DeJounte because you felt like you had to get another ball handler, and he was the best guy who you felt like you could get at that time. He just happened to actually play point guard and then had to move to two. Now, if you make a trade now, the biggest thing you need to figure out is just find the right fit for Trae. And then that can maximize what the backcourt could be. Obviously, what you probably want to do is upgrade the defensive side of it. Make sure whoever you put beside him it can help him defensively, but also can score the ball if needed. But doesn't need high volume in terms of like ball to be able to score. It's the reason why Klay and Steph Curry have been so great because Klay doesn't need the ball to be good. He could just operate off bounce playmaking, getting into a position, spot up shooting, catch and shoot. So that to me is maybe what you could look at if you're the Hawks and you're trying to figure out that decision with Trae and DeJounte. It's just finding a guy who fits with Trae's skill set better because you have Jalen who can step into that role and run the offense a little bit. Kobe Buffkin, as he continues to grow in his development, can run the offense. Like I said, we'll see what they do with AJ Griffin. I mean, Bogey, if he has to, could do a little something. So I feel like you're in a much better position right now than you were when you did trade for DeJounte Murray, because at that time you legitimately had no one else who could run the offense legitimately. Kevin just couldn't do it consistently. Bogey, like I said, that's not his strength. So outside of that, and then when you had Lou Williams, I mean, he's more of a scorer than a facilitator. So you really didn't have someone else who could actually facilitate a little bit. Now I think you do have that. And I think you have guys who, like a Kongu, depending on what's happening, can facilitate a little bit. Jalen can facilitate a little bit. Kobe can facilitate a little bit. AJ can facilitate a little bit. You got multiple guys now who can kind of work with it now and expand their games and be able to do it if needed and called upon. So realistically, for me, I'm looking at that's why Jalen's growth in that regard and him running point forward and him improving and getting more comfortable in that role could just be big for them making that decision, because you brought him in here for a reason. Now, is the reason we brought him in here still needed? We could talk about the scoring, because DeJounte's been big when it came to scoring. There's been games that he's closed out this year with Trey on the floor, and because he's another guy who can make those shots down the stretch. And that's something you also want to try to have, obviously at all, just because you don't want it to be Trey Young or bust. You want it to be like, all right, if they're going to double team Trey, DeJounte can get us there, because DeJounte has the capability of scoring buckets, getting downhill, getting and ones. Obviously, we know about his patented mid range, getting into the rim float game at times. So, that to me is more of, the evaluation the Hawks have to make in that regard, and figuring out, okay, if Jalen's made this type of improvement in that regard, and in terms of playing point forward and facilitating the offense and his ability to pass, what does that mean for DeJounte? Is if that fit is not natural, and if that fit does not work for you, if you're the front office, do you feel like, okay, we can kind of now move and try to find a better player to fit next to Trey Young, and then just fit the rest of the whole team in general? So, that's something that obviously will be looked into, and obviously they'll see about trying to make official when we get to the off season, and we'll see what their actual decision ends up being when it gets to that point. But overall, biggest takeaway from the last two games, like I said, is that Hawks are an enigma. You don't know what you've got. You got an elite performance and you got a terrible performance. I mean, this team wins 3 in a row, loses 3 in a row, wins 2 in a row, loses 2 in a row, wins 4 in a row, loses 4 in a row. They are just consistently inconsistent. And I'm sure, like I said, as a Hawks fan, it's very frustrating. The season has been very frustrating for a lot of fans. Uh, people, obviously, if you've been a fan for a long time, you've seen worse seasons. Obviously, you've seen some excruciating seasons, but I think this, in a general, I think this frustrates people more because of the fact that the expectations, and then not reaching those expectations, and then seeing the injuries. Like right now, this would be a great opportunity for the young players to be able to take advantage of the injuries that we had, but Kobe's hurt, AJ's hurt, Mohamed Gay is hurt, Seth is hurt, and obviously with the amount of injuries you've had, if you're the Hawks, you do need to probably look into your training and wellness, strength and conditioning. You got to look into your medical staff and be like, all right, so is this like a medical thing? Do we need to change who we have as our medical staff? Because it is weird that we're just having a ton of injuries around this time. And sometimes you just have a bad year of the injury bug, and that happens. But obviously, if everybody getting hurt, you're kind of like, all right, is there anything that we need to change, maybe organizationally within our health, our medical staff, to maybe help with players maybe not getting hurt next year? So, because it feels like a lot of the injuries have piled up after the All-Star break. You just took a week off, and now all these injuries are piling up. So, I think that's something definitely that you want to look into for sure when trying to make those decisions and trying to figure out, how can we control the amount of injuries we have on the roster? Because, like I said, it's and you've had some unluck. Trey having his first major injury of his career. It was Yucca coming back was big last night. Obviously, coming back from that injury. I would expect that you're going to hear something on Kobe Buffkin this week, because they said 7 to 10 days, so that we're in that range to hear something from on what's happening with him. And then I think Trey maybe next week and a half. So I said Hawks technically get healthy before playing, and then we'll see what that looks like. But just something that we have to keep an eye on moving forward. And obviously, like I said, Hawks got to get ready for Phoenix coming up, and they're still doing the West Coast trip before they can go home. So we'll have to see. But like I said, tell 2 games, tell of 2 Hawks teams in back-to-back games, Sunday and Monday against the LA, which they split 1-1. And they are actually 2-2 on the season against the LA teams now. So, they do what they do. But I think that's about it here on the Believe in Hawks podcast. I'm your boy Bryce Lewis. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Bryce_2K. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel and like the video for more Hawks content. And don't forget to leave a rating or review. Or if you're listening to audio as well. Appreciate all the support, guys, and we'll stay on top of what happens next for the Hawks. It's your boy Bryce Lewis. See you next time.